Hello there, and welcome back to the Sleep Science, where the lights are low, the questions are big, and the answers come wrapped in a gentle whisper. Tonight you step into the first breaths of the Cenozoic, the age that begins in silence after the thunder of dinosaurs ends. You picture yourself standing in the dim afterglow of a catastrophe, the sky still bruised with ash and smoke, the ground littered with charred ferns and fallen trunks. The air tastes like dust and sulphur, sharp in your lungs, and each breath carries the weight of a planet trying to catch itself. 66 million years ago, an asteroid the size of a city had smacked into what is now Mexico, digging a crater wide enough to swallow whole states. You probably won't survive this, to be honest. Most creatures didn't. But for the purpose of tonight's little time travel stroll, you get to linger and watch what comes next. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you want to leave a sleepy little footprint, drop your location and the local time in the comments. I love seeing the global constellation of night owls. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The ash doesn't just float in the air, it hangs, thick as a heavy curtain, dimming the sunlight to a twilight even at noon. You shuffle forward, your shoes sinking into a carpet of soot. Beneath your feet are tiny glassy beads called tektites, once molten droplets hurled across the sky before raining down. Historians still argue whether the asteroid impact alone ended the dinosaurs, or whether volcanic eruptions in India's Deccan traps had already poisoned the air and seas, softening the blow. Either way, you're standing in the quiet aftermath where silence is the loudest thing. Here, trees are shattered like broken matchsticks. Rivers are clogged with rotting trunks, and the smell, like a mix of tar and wet ash, sticks to your clothes. You pass a pond that glows faintly with oil slicks, rainbow ripples bending in the weak light. Strangely enough, frogs croak somewhere nearby, reminding you that not everyone perished. Amphibians, small mammals, birds, they're the scrappy tenants who kept their leases through the apocalypse. You might expect the land to feel empty, but no, it's busy in small ways. Ants march over fallen branches, carrying scraps of fungus and insect wings. Beetles wriggle through the bark of a half-burnt tree. You kneel and see a mammal, tiny, shrew-like, eyes wide, whiskers twitching. It darts away with the speed of something that knows giants once roamed, but now owns the silence. This is the future in a miniature, a bundle of fur that carries a secret. Mammals will shape the Earth to come. Of course, the planet isn't entirely finished punishing its residents. Nights plunge into deep cold like an endless winter. Ash blocks sunlight, photosynthesis falters, and plants die in chains of starvation. Insects lose their nectar, herbivores lose their plants, and predators find themselves out of work. You trudge through a clearing and spot a toppled skeleton. Some final dinosaur, ribs arched like the beams of a ruined cathedral. It's eerie, almost theatrical, as if nature left behind props to remind you what you just missed. Oddly, one fringe tidbit you overhear in your drifting half-dream is that early mammals may have survived partly by eating insects and even fungi that thrived in the darkness. Imagine that. The age of mammals owes itself to mushrooms, at least in some retellings. You can almost picture one tiny creature nibbling on a puffball, oblivious to the fact that its descendants will one day invent Wi-Fi. The world is unstable, but it's not hopeless. The fires begin to settle, the skies clear fraction by fraction, and pale green shoots poke up between blackened logs. The smell of fresh growth creeps in, sharper than smoke, promising that forests will return. In your ear, the wind carries the faintest whisper of resilience. Earth has done this before. After all, the Permian extinction wiped out far more, and yet life bounced back stranger and stronger. You walk toward a riverbed, and here the story takes a softer turn. The water is low, but reeds have begun to sprout, delicate and trembling. A pair of turtles slide into the shallows, their shells dull with soot. They swim as if nothing happened, an ancient shrug from animals older than dinosaurs themselves. You crouch, dip your hand in the water, and feel the cool current tugging against your skin. For a moment, you forget the ash and listen only to the sound of water pushing pebbles. Overhead, the sky is streaked with reds and purples, an artist's canvas smeared by smoke. A lone bird wheels through it, descendant of small raptors that once terrorized the ground. Its wings beat quickly, as if hurrying to occupy the empty airspace. You tilt your head, following it, and can't help but smile. The dinosaurs aren't entirely gone. They've simply taken to the skies, shrinking down into feathered echoes. That chirping sparrow you ignore in the modern world, that's a velociraptor with a new wardrobe. By now, night is creeping in. Stars peek through cracks in the ash clouds, and you realize how quiet this planet has become. No more roars, no more thundering herds. Just the soft scuttle of mammals and the hush of wind. And strangely, it soothes you, like the earth itself is holding its breath before the next act. You find a patch of unburned moss and sit, leaning back, eyes heavy. For all its chaos, this is still a cradle, broken but ready to nurture. The Cenozoic is here, whispering that out of ruin comes renewal. The world has quieted, but you can hear it stir again, almost imperceptibly, as if the soil itself is shuffling under your feet. You wander through the wreckage of the post-dinosaur Earth, and there's motion everywhere, not the thundering stomps of sauropods or the hunting cries of tyrannosaurs, but quick skittering shapes. Tiny claws against bark, flashes of fur darting between rocks, the flutter of wings low to the ground. These are the survivors, the overlooked, the underestimated. Small mammals, birds, lizards, and even insects are weaving a new story from the scraps left behind. You pause, crouch low, and notice that the silence of emptiness is actually a bustling quiet, a low-volume hum of life daring to continue. Near a fallen tree, you spot a creature no bigger than your palm, a multituberculate, which looks suspiciously like a mouse but with teeth made for crunching seeds and nuts. It twitches its whiskers at you, then vanishes under the log in a blur. These rodent-like pioneers are among the longest-lasting mammalian groups in history, hanging around for tens of millions of years before vanishing in the Oligocene. Historians still argue whether they were pushed aside by the rise of true rodents or if climate shifts simply left them stranded. Either way, in this moment, they rule the underbrush with the confidence of something that has slipped through catastrophe unnoticed. Your gaze follows movement higher up. In the branches, early birds hop nervously, their feathers a little ragged, their beaks slightly different from the tidy designs you're used to. Some are descendants of enantiornithines, a branch of bird-like creatures that thrived alongside dinosaurs, though most of their kind didn't make it past the Great Impact. Instead, sturdier relatives, the ancestors of modern birds, are beginning to dominate. Their hollow bones and quick metabolisms a blessing in this unstable world. One flutters awkwardly, nearly colliding with another, and you chuckle softly. Even here, evolution has its bloopers reel. Farther down the slope, reptiles sun themselves on a blackened rock. Small lizards lick the air with quick tongues, while a snake uncoils, its scales catching the light in a muted shimmer. Crocodiles, too, are present. Those ancient holdouts that never got the memo about dinosaur extinction. A pair float in a sluggish stream, only their eyes above water, as if they're waiting for someone to tell them their time is up. Fun fringe fact, in some ancient Egyptian texts written millions of years later, crocodile dung was reportedly used as sunscreen. You shake your head at the thought. It seems survival has always invited odd tricks, whether in the Eocene marshes or a desert along the Nile. Tonight's focus stays on the small mammals, the creatures whose quiet persistence will rewrite the script. You trail one of them as it scampers through your weeds, pausing to dig with frantic little paws. The soil crumbles easily, revealing a stash of seeds. You realize the importance of this. Seeds survive the apocalypse better than delicate leaves, and these tiny mammals have learned to hoard them, chew them, and thrive on them. This is evolution's version of stocking up on canned beans during a blackout. Not glamorous, but effective. The air carries a faint sweetness now. Wildflowers trying their luck in the cracks of ruin. Pollinators buzz drunkenly, clumsy but determined. Bees survive the asteroid's chaos, though their populations nearly collapsed. Some researchers still debate whether flowering plants had already tipped the scales toward insect pollination dominance before the impact, or if this event accelerated the process. Whatever the answer, you see the partnership rekindled right before your eyes, bees dipping into blossom, carrying the dust of tomorrow's forests on their legs. You climb a ridge, the ash crunching under your boots like brittle snow. From here you see the spread of green returning patch by patch. A valley below is dotted with shrubs, saplings and grasses. Scurrying through them are mammals of slightly larger build. something like early primates, lemur-like creatures called plesiadapiforms. They leap branch to branch with wide eyes, scanning for fruit and insects. Their movements are graceful, almost mischievous, as though they sense they've been handed the future stage. You can't help but smirk. If you squint hard enough, you might see one of them holding the first monkey business meeting. The scene isn't without danger, though. Raptors may have vanished, but predators still lurk. A lizard longer than your arm snaps at a bird missing only by inches. A snake swallows a nestling whole, its jaws stretching wider than seems possible. Predation hasn't disappeared. It has just scaled down to fit the smaller cast. The balance of life remains the same. Eat or be eaten, just in miniature. A quirky aside drifts into your thoughts. Some paleontologists speculate that early mammals not only ate insects, but also crunched on dinosaur eggs, perhaps contributing in small ways to the decline of the giants. Imagine a creature the size of a rat taking part in toppling the kingly reptiles of Earth. It's almost comedic, like a slapstick punchline written across 60 million years of dinosaur dominance. You imagine a Tyrannosaurus Rex glaring down at a mouse nibbling an egg, muttering, "Really? This is how it ends?" As the day cools, you settle under a scorched tree listening to the night chorus building. Frogs croak, insects buzz, and tiny mammals squeak softly, hidden in burrows. The soundscape is layered, modest compared to the Mesozoic, but comforting. The stars above look clearer now, the ash thinning, the Milky Way stretching like spilled sugar across the sky. You feel Earth itself settling into a lullaby, promising that out of small beginnings, greatness can grow, and here in the hush of the Paleocene night, you realize the stage has been sown. No longer is the planet ruled by towering reptiles. Instead, the age of the small, the adaptable, and the quick-thinking has begun. From shrew to monkey to human, this is the quiet spark that will burn into the age of mammals. You stretch your legs, sink back into the soft moss, and close your eyes, letting the whispers of tiny survivors scurry across your dreams. Morning comes softly in this fragile new world, and you find yourself walking through a haze that smells less of smoke now and more of damp soil. The charred trees you passed yesterday wear delicate crowns of green shoots, fragile as lace, and here and there you spot carpets of wildflowers that weren't there before. Earth is reclaiming herself, sending green tendrils into every crack of blackened ground. It feels almost defiant, as if the plants are whispering, "We're not done yet." You brush your hand along a sapling's leaves. Their surface is waxy and new, and marvel at how quickly life rushes to paint over scars. Forests are spreading, piecing themselves together like patches in a quilt. First come the hardy ferns and shrubs, then the flowering plants, angiosperms, that had already been gaining ground in the dinosaur era. They're everywhere now, their blooms shamelessly bright, attracting insects with perfumes you can almost taste. Bees zigzag clumsily, while beetles crawl over petals like tourists lost in a bazaar. Historians still argue whether flowering plants rose to dominance because of the asteroid's reset button, or whether they were already poised to take over, simply waiting for the thunder lizards to vacate. Either way, the ground under your boots is a festival of blooms, reclaiming the grey wasteland one petal at a time. And the forests aren't shy about reaching high. You step into a grove where young trees are racing each other skyward. Their trunks are thin, but their ambition is tall. A few species, early relatives of today's oaks and sycamores, begin to spread wide leaves that cast shade across the ground. Beneath them, little mammals scurry, darting from root to root, enjoying the sudden abundance of cover. You crouch and notice a curious detail: fungi growing in symbiosis with roots, their hidden filaments trading nutrients like secret bankers of the forest. Without these underground networks, none of this green revival would work. Life, it seems, has its internet long before Wi-Fi. The air is thicker now with humidity, and you hear the buzz of insects echoing from all directions. Dragonflies sweep across your path, wings glittering in the sunlight. Their ancestors were once giants in the Carboniferous, with wingspans longer than your arm, but these are smaller, sleeker, as though evolution has pressed the fun-sized button. You watch one perch on a reed, tilting its head as if sizing you up, then dart away with a flick of gossamer wings. You wander toward a wetland where reeds and cattails sway. A turtle clambers onto a log, stretching its neck toward the sun while a pair of frogs chirp from the shadows. The water reflects the sky, clearer than it's been in ages, though a faint rainbow sheen of leftover oils still glides along the edges. Beneath the surface, fish dart in quick silver flashes, their scales catching the light. Some are survivors from ancient lineages, tough little creatures who shrugged off the end of the dinosaurs. You kneel by the shore, trail your fingers in the cool water, and watch ripples distort your reflection, your face overlaid with the shimmer of lily pads and reeds. And then, above you, the forest canopy sings. Early primate-like mammals, called plesiadapiforms, leap between branches, snatching fruits and flowers. Their eyes are forward-facing, giving them depth perception, an evolutionary experiment that will one day lead to binocular vision in humans. You chuckle softly, imagining them as acrobatic little daredevils, tiny tightrope walkers rehearsing for an evolutionary circus. Fringe tidbit. Some scientists once debated whether plesiadapiforms should even be classified as primates at all. Their anatomy a jigsaw puzzle of almost but not quite. For now, they're just energetic neighbours, bouncing through the greenery as if to announce, "This is our time now." The smell of fresh sap drifts from a nearby tree. You notice where insects have chewed at its bark, leaving glistening amber droplets. You pause to imagine what might get trapped in that resin. Flies, ants, even tiny hairs. Millions of years later, someone will hold a polished piece of amber to the light, marvel at its preserved prisoner, and perhaps dream up a dinosaur park that absolutely should not be open to the public. You grin at the thought, a gentle reminder that nature's accidents often become humanity's obsessions. But not everything is gentle. In one clearing you spot an early predator, a bird with hooked beak and sharp talons, swooping down to grab a mammal no bigger than your hand. The squeak is short, the flutter of wings triumphant. Balance returns quickly in this new ecosystem. Plants feed insects, insects feed mammals, mammals feed birds, and the cycle tightens like a spiral. You walk away quietly, the reminder fresh. Survival here is not guaranteed, not even in paradise in progress. You find yourself drawn to a ridge where the view stretches wide. Below, green spreads in waves across valleys and hills, broken by streams of silver rivers. The earth looks younger now, less scarred, as though she's powdered her face after a long night. The ash is nearly gone, washed into soils that now brim with nutrients. What was once disaster has become fertilizer. Ironic, isn't it? Destruction laying down the red carpet for renewal. And you, standing there with the wind brushing your hair, feel the calm weight of this truth. Life doesn't hesitate. It doesn't wait politely for conditions to improve. It claws, roots, blooms, and scurries into every empty niche. You breathe deeply, lungs filling with air that smells of green things and damp stone, and for the first time since the impact you sense hope solidifying into permanence. As the sun lowers, painting the horizon in amber and rose, you step into the deepening forest. Shadows stretch long, leaves rustle softly overhead, and the air grows cool. The night will belong to the scurriers and the singers, but the day has spoken loudly. The green has won. You walk slower now, letting the rhythm of the forest ease into your chest. In the hush of twilight, the once grey world glows with new life, each breath a promise of the vast ages still to come. You wake to the sound of rustling in the undergrowth, quick, darting sounds that seem louder than they should in the stillness of dawn. The forest you saw reclaiming the land is no longer just a sea of green. It's alive with movement, as if every branch and shadow holds a secret. The mammals have begun to step forward, no longer just furtive survivors. They're experimenting, pushing boundaries and testing new forms. You crouch low, and in the dim light you spot one, a tiny creature, barely larger than your thumb, snuffling through leaf litter with endless energy. This is a Paleocene mammal, shrew-like in size and manner, its long nose twitching as it searches for beetles and seeds. It looks unremarkable, yet you know it is the spark that will ignite entire lineages. As you walk further, you notice how diverse these newcomers already are. Some scurry along the ground, quick as shadows, while others climb with agile limbs, gripping bark with claws and experimenting with balance. There are species that glide short distances. Membranes stretch between forelimbs like miniature prototypes of flying squirrels. Others probe the edges of rivers, their wet fur clinging as they snatch small crustaceans. The mammals of this time are nature's sketches, rough drafts scribbled across the planet, some destined to vanish, others to become empires of their own. Historians still argue whether this burst of mammalian experimentation was a direct result of dinosaurs vanishing, or whether the stage had been quietly set long before, mammals just waiting in the wings. Either way, you're watching the rehearsal for the age of giants to be. One of the more remarkable figures you encounter is a pantodon, one of the earliest large herbivores. It lumbers out of the thicket, dog-sized for now, but looking strangely hippo-like, with heavy bones that thud softly against the soil. It snuffles leaves with a face that is equal parts endearing and awkward, as if evolution hadn't yet decided what kind of animal it wanted this to be. You watch it chew, its jaw moving in a slow circle, and you feel oddly comforted. This ungainly thing is proof that mammals are daring to grow larger, daring to take up more space. Nearby, a predator lurks, though not in the form of sharp-toothed cats just yet. Instead, it's a creodont, one of the first serious mammalian carnivores. It pads silently, long body low to the ground, eyes bright with focus. You freeze, but its gaze isn't on you. It lunges instead for a grazing mammal, and in a quick, brutal motion, the hunt is over. It's a strange hybrid to your eyes, part dog, part weasel, part something unfamiliar but deadly all the same. Later lineages will refine predation into sleeker models, wolves, cats, bears, but for now, the creodon is the template, the work-in-progress assassin of the Paleocene. You take a break under a tree, leaning against its bark, and notice something odd near your hand. Claw marks, thin and delicate, running up the trunk. Looking up, you spot a tiny primate-like creature, a plesiadapid clinging to the branches. It stares back at you with wide, curious eyes, then bounds away in a fluid leap. Forward-facing eyes, grasping hands, flexible joints. It seems minor in the moment, but you know where this leads. That little gymnast is the ancestor of monkeys, apes, and eventually the people who will stare at glowing rectangles until 3 a.m. You smile at the irony. Our lineage didn't start with grandeur, just a twitchy tree dweller grabbing fruit. And while you're smiling, you catch another fringe tidbit drifting through your mind. During the Paleocene, some mammals developed teeth that looked suspiciously like can openers, wide and ridged for crushing seeds and nuts. Imagine a world where survival meant evolving the biological equivalent of a Swiss Army knife. These were not glamorous animals, but effective ones, and effectiveness is what survival favours most. As the sun climbs, the forest fills with calls and chatter. Mammals chirp, hiss, squeak and growl, an orchestra of experiments finding their voices. You notice how different they sound from the booming roars of dinosaurs. There's no single dominating sound here, just a chorus of small actors. It feels democratic in a way, as though the throne left empty by dinosaurs has been broken up into 1,000 little chairs. You wander to a clearing where fruit trees are in bloom. The air is sweet, thick with the perfume of ripening berries. Small mammals gather here, nibbling nervously, darting between shade and sunlight. Birds join the feast too, swooping down to pluck the juiciest morsels. A small argument breaks out. A bird shrieks at a mammal. The mammal hisses back, both unwilling to surrender a treat. It's comical, like a playground fight over a popsicle, and you laugh under your breath, careful not to scare them off. Farther along, you find a burrow dug deep into a hillside. From within, glowing eyes peer out. Tiny creatures curled together for warmth and safety. Their fur is rough, their movements jittery, but you recognize the instinct. To burrow, to hide, to survive. This is the mammalian talent, the gift that allowed them to weather catastrophe. Burrows, nests, dens, there, the fortresses of the small, proof that survival isn't about size but about strategy. By dusk, the forest has changed character again. Shadows lengthen, insects rise in buzzing swarms, and bats emerge. Early bats, awkward in their flight, wings leathery and erratic. They swoop overhead in jagged arcs, napping up moths with sharp clicks. Their silhouettes are eerie against the pink sky. But you know this too is an evolutionary success. Mammals are not only walking and climbing now, they're conquering the air. As you lie back on the cool ground, watching the bats trace patterns above, you realize something important. Mammals are no longer merely survivors. They are explorers, pioneers, filling every empty corner left behind. Small though they may be, their ambitions are vast, and in their restlessness, you glimpse the beginnings of a new empire. The dinosaurs had their thunder. Now mammals begin with whispers, scratches, and squeaks. It's humbler, yes, but it's a hum that will grow louder with every passing age. You wake to a heavier sound in the underbrush, a thudding that doesn't belong to the tiny scurriers you've grown used to. The mammals are no longer only the size of shrews and terwirrels. Some of them have pushed boldly into larger frames, as though testing how far the new world will let them grow. The Paleocene's gentle experiments give way to the Eocene's confidence, and suddenly you're looking at creatures that stretch taller, bulkier, stranger. The giants of this new age are arriving, not as polished as today's elephants or horses, but as prototypes, awkward and fascinating. The first you see is a coryphodon, lumbering out of the greenery like a half-finished draft of a hippo. It's the size of a small cow, barrel-bodied with short legs that thud against the soft soil. Its teeth are blunt, its eyes a little sleepy, and yet it radiates importance. This is no more a background character, this is a mammal daring to take up the space once reserved for dinosaurs. It tears leaves with its heavy jaws, chewing with slow patience, unconcerned about predators. After all, size itself is a kind of armor. You step quietly as it passes, struck by how much of the Earth's new script is being rewritten right in front of you. Not far away, a different kind of experiment prowls. Andrewsarchus, long muzzle, sharp teeth, body built like a bulky wolf, it's one of the largest land carnivorous mammals of its time. It paces across a clearing, shoulders rippling, head low to sniff the air. You feel the same chill you might from spotting a lion in tall grass. But this predator is stranger, with the proportions of a wolf grafted onto the imagination of a nightmare. Historians still argue whether Andrewsarchus was a dedicated hunter, or more of a scavenger, raiding carcasses with its bone-crushing jaws. Either way, you know better than to step closer. As you move through the forest, more giants appear. Some are ungainly, their legs too short for their bodies, their backs humped like unfinished bridges. Others are elegant in embryo, hints of what will one day become horses or deer. One herd of herbivores trots by, their faces elongated, their hooves clumsy but unmistakably adapted for running. They move in groups, nervous and quick, as though the world is teaching them that safety comes in numbers. You chuckle softly. It looks like a prehistoric version of a jogging club, except with the constant risk of being eaten. And speaking of awkward beauty, you stumble upon one of the earliest titans, Paraceratherium, a rhinoceros relative that will one day tower as tall as a giraffe. What you see now is perhaps not the fully grown version, but even so, it looms above the trees, its long neck reaching for leaves far above your head. It moves slowly, gracefully, and when it exhales, the sound is like a soft snort that rattles the leaves. Imagine an elephant stripped of tusks, stretched tall, and you'll have a sense of it. Fringe tidbit. Some reconstructions once gave Paraceratherium thick, elephant-like trunks, though most modern depictions ditch the idea. Still, the thought of this giant waving a fleshy hose around like a clumsy parade float makes you grin. The oceans, too, are echoing this trend towards size. You glance toward the coastline, where four-legged creatures are waddling clumsily on the sand. These are early whales, Pachycetus and its cousins, still half land walker, half water dweller. Their eyes blink against the sun, their paws paddle awkwardly as they dive into the surf. Underwater, their bodies look more at home, tails flicking as they snap at fish. Here is the very beginning of the leviathans that will one day sing across oceans. You shake your head in awe. Giants are sprouting everywhere, both on land and sea. But not all the experiments are successful. Some of the large mammals you encounter look frankly bizarre, as though evolution scribbled designs in a hurry. There are euentathares, with long saber-like canines jutting from faces otherwise meant for grazing. They shuffle about in herds, their teeth looking more intimidating than useful, perhaps for show, perhaps for fighting rivals. You squint at them and think they look like hippos dressed up for Halloween. Fearsome costumes with gentle stomachs. Predators respond in kind. Creodonts grow larger, more muscular, prowling with sharper teeth and bolder steps. You watch one stalk the edge of a herd, muscles coiling, ready to test whether these bulky herbivores are as defenseless as they appear. A chase erupts suddenly. Thunder of hooves, shrieks, crashing branches, the air smells of panic, dust rising around you. The predator fails this time, left panting and glaring, but the lesson is clear. As herbivores grow, predators must sharpen their claws to match. Historians still argue whether climate or opportunity was the true driver of this mammalian explosion in size. Some suggest the warm Eocene greenhouse world provided abundant vegetation, enough calories to support larger frames. Others argue the absence of dinosaurs simply opened ecological roles that mammals rush to fill. You glance around at the massive bodies lumbering and leaping, and think, maybe it's both. When the stage is empty and the buffet is endless, of course the actors will grow larger. Night falls and the forest is restless. Large mammals graze noisily while predators prowl in the shadows. You lie on a slope overlooking a herd of coryphodon, their round bodies silhouetted against the starlight. They chew and grunt softly, tails swishing, as moths flicker through the air above them. The ground vibrates faintly beneath their movements, a steady pulse like the heartbeat of the earth itself. You close your eyes and listen, and it's clear. The age of giants has returned, but this time it belongs to mammals. Their forms may be strange, incomplete, but they are here to stay, filling the empty niches with bulk, bone, and quiet ambition. The forest hums with morning heat, and as you make your way toward the coast, the smell of salt water sharpens in the air. The Cenozoic story isn't only about land. The oceans too are rewriting themselves. You step from the tree line and onto a stretch of sandy beach, where waves lap with rhythmic patience, glittering under a sun brighter than it has been since the ash first cleared. And here, in the surf, something remarkable is happening. Creatures that once prowled the land are subsiding back into the sea, their bodies caught between two worlds. You watch, fascinated, as a four-legged shape wades clumsily through the shallows. It's Pachycetus, one of the earliest whales, though calling it a whale feels almost dishonest. Its long snout and dog-like frame make it look more like a crocodile wearing a lab coat. It wades deep, paws paddling, head dipping below the water, surfacing again with a splash and a mouthful of fish. You grin, its evolution at its most awkward stage, halfway between a wolf and a dolphin. Historians still argue whether Pachycetus spent more of its life on land or in water, but either way, this creature is the starting point of an oceanic dynasty. Further out, you catch sight of Ambulocetus, the so-called walking whale. Longer, sleeker, with webbed feet and a powerful tail, it moves like a crocodile stalking prey. It lunges from the water to grab a fish, then disappears with a splash that rocks the shallows. You take a step back instinctively, heart racing, but then chuckle at yourself. You're not the target. Fish are far tastier. The sea is filling with these transitional hunters, and their success will soon transform them into the streamlined leviathans we know as whales. You walk along the shore, the sand hot under your feet, and notice another player, Basilosaurus. The name suggests lizard king, but it's no reptile. It's an early whale, long and serpentine, stretching nearly 50 feet. It glides through the waves with eerie grace, its body more eel-like than dolphin-like. You watch its head breach the surface, jaws lined with sharp teeth and snapping down on a school of fish. The splash sprays your face with salt, and for a moment you shiver. Imagine mistaking that silhouette for a sea serpent. No wonder fringe stories of ocean monsters persist in human folklore. Above the water, seabirds wheel and dive, their cries echoing. Some are descendants of dinosaurs, of course, but others are evolving into new marine specialists. You spot an ancient penguin waddling at the shoreline. Kairuku, taller than you, wings stiff as paddles. It shuffles into the surf, dives, and vanishes with surprising speed. You blink, half amused, half unnerved. An emperor penguin is cute. A 6-foot penguin is nightmare fuel in a tuxedo. The ocean itself looks healthier than the land. Coral reefs begin to spread again, vibrant and busy with fish, mollusks, and crabs. You kneel and peer into the shallows where sea urchins cling to rocks and starfish crawl with slow deliberation. A horseshoe crab scuttles by, armoured like an ancient knight, unchanged for hundreds of millions of years. If dinosaurs couldn't topple them, you certainly won't. The deeper you look, the more dangerous the waters become. Sharks, the eternal predators, glide beneath the waves. Some are familiar in shape, sleek triangular fins cutting the surface, but others are monstrous prototypes. A Todus, an ancestor of the later Megalodon, patrols these seas. You don't see it directly, but the shadow beneath the waves is unmistakable. Enormous, deliberate, ancient. The fish scatter in panic, a silver explosion, and you realise you're watching the quiet announcement of a new apex predator. You take a moment to reflect, standing at the border of sea and land. On one side, mammals experiment with hooves and size. On the other, they slip back into the water, reshaping themselves into serpents and torpedoes. It's a strange duality. Earth testing the mammalian blueprint in every possible environment, as though the planet is unwilling to settle on just one version. And maybe that's the point. Life doesn't pick a single path. It sprawls extravagantly. Fringe tidbit. Some paleontologists have suggested that early whales might have had fur, at least in patches, before they became fully aquatic. Picture a furry dolphin paddling through the surf like a soggy Labrador retriever. It's not the majestic image we usually assign to whales, but it fits the messy truth of evolution. You laugh at the thought, imagining Basilosaurus shaking water from its non-existent fur like a dog fresh from the bath. As the sun begins to sink, the ocean glows gold and the air cools with salt mist. You sit on a driftwood log listening to the rhythm of waves and the distant cries of seabirds. Behind you, forests hum with mammalian giants. Before you, the sea churns with leviathans in training. The Cenozoic has opened its second stage of experiments, and already, the outlines of the modern world shimmer faintly through the haze of time. The tide rises, lapping at your feet, and you close your eyes, hearing the surf blend with the distant calls of creatures both strange and familiar. The earth is no longer empty, it is vibrant, restless, brimming with possibilities. And somewhere beneath the waves, a song is beginning, one that will, in millions of years, echo through the oceans as the haunting calls of whales. The trail away from the beach pulls you inland, and soon your steps climb through a landscape that feels restless underfoot. Rocks jut at odd angles, and the air carries the metallic tang of fresh stone, as if the earth herself has just rolled over in her sleep. The continents are on the move, drifting silently across the planet's face. It is the slowest of dances, yet here in the Cenozoic, the choreography is reshaping everything. Climates, coastlines, and this very stage where mammals, birds, and plants will perform their stories. You pause at a ridge where the ground is split into jagged scars. Below, a valley opens, carved not by water but by tectonic tension. The continents, once locked into the puzzle of Pangaea millions of years earlier, are now scattered and rearranging themselves like restless furniture. North America drifts westward, colliding gently with the Pacific Plate, its coastlines rumbling with volcanoes. South America drifts alone, an island continent where strange beasts are beginning to evolve in splendid isolation. And far to the north, Eurasia stretches and flexes, while India, the wandering traveller, rushes northward to crash into Asia, collision that will lift the Himalayas skyward like the wrinkles of a frown across the planet's brow. The air is warm now, globally so. The Paleocene and Eocene are greenhouse worlds, fueled partly by volcanic carbon, partly by shifting currents. Palm trees sway not just in the tropics, but in regions where you'd expect snow today. Crocodiles bask near the poles, their jaws gaping lazily in the weak sun. Historians still argue whether global warming events like the Paleocene-Eocene thermal maximum were triggered by sudden volcanic outgassing or by the release of methane from seafloor deposits. Whatever the trigger, the result is unmistakable. A planet sweltering in its own breath. And yet, even as warmth dominates, whispers of ice are waiting in the wings. You climb higher into the mountains, the air cooling with each step until patches of snow appear between the rocks. These early alpine ranges are younger than they look, pushed upward by tectonic restlessness. Somewhere far south, Antarctica is drifting into its lonely isolation, detaching from South America and Australia. In time, this separation will allow the circumpolar current to spin freely around it, sealing the continent in an icy fortress. You sit on a ledge, gazing out over the peaks, and sense the tension. Earth is a planet of extremes, and balance never lasts. A quirky detail drifts into your thoughts. When India first collided with Asia, the impact was so dramatic that some researchers estimate more than 1,000 kilometers of land crumpled and folded upward to create the Himalayas. Imagine continents moving with the subtlety of bumper cars, except the crash lasts millions of years. You chuckle softly. Geology has the patience of a saint and the subtlety of a bulldozer. Down in the valleys, rivers rush with meltwater, their currents cutting channels through young stone. On their banks, mammals graze, while birds wheel overhead, taking advantage of the shifting landscapes. You notice how ecosystems change with the land. Grasslands beginning to spread in places, forests thickening in others, wetlands forming where tectonic sag creates basins. It's as though the land itself is a restless gardener, rearranging the biomes with every shrug and twist. The seas are changing too. The Atlantic, once a narrow seam, yawns wider each year. You walk along a cliff edge and see the horizon stretching endlessly, waves rolling toward you with the certainty of time itself. The widening of the Atlantic redirects ocean currents, altering weather across continents. Rain falls where once it was dry, deserts spread where once it was lush. You realise that tectonics doesn't just shape mountains and valleys, it writes the climate script. Fringe tidbit: some scientists believe that plate tectonics may even influence evolution indirectly, by isolating populations and forcing adaptation. For example, South America, cut off for much of the Cenozoic, became a cradle for bizarre creatures like giant ground sloths and terror birds. You imagine a scientist peering at a map and muttering, "Continents are basically nature's randomizer setting." And really they are. As twilight settles, you find yourself on another ridge, watching the horizon glow red with volcanic fire. Far below, a plume of smoke rises from a fissure, the Earth's crust tearing just enough to let magma spill. The glow is both menacing and beautiful, a reminder that beneath the surface, molten forces churn ceaselessly. You lie back on the rocky ground, the vibrations faint under your body, and listen to the low hum of the planet's machinery. The night grows colder here in the mountains, the stars sharp and clear above. You pull your arms close and breathe slowly, realizing that this restless Earth will never stop shifting. Continents collide, mountains rise, seas close, ice comes and goes, all at a pace too slow to feel but too powerful to ignore. And you, small figure resting against stone, are reminded that the world beneath your feet is never still, even in its deepest sleep. The warmth hits you before the light does, a heavy blanket of air that smells faintly of resin and blooming flowers. You're walking into the Eocene greenhouse world now, a time when Earth tilts toward lush excess. The forests are dense and humid, dripping with vines, their canopies buzzing with insects in constant high-pitched conversation. You tug at your collar as if it makes any difference. This climate is relentless, and yet it feels oddly alive, a planet in the throes of a fever dream. Palms line the horizon where you wouldn't expect them. You rub your eyes, certain the heat is playing tricks, but no, palm trees really are growing in what will one day be the Arctic Circle. Their fronds sway lazily in the warm breeze, and crocodiles bask on the banks of high-latitude rivers. Jaws open in lazy defiance of geography. Historians still argue whether the Eocene's warmth was primarily fueled by volcanic carbon releases, or by the earlier Paleocene-Eocene thermal maximum lingering like a hangover. Whatever the cause, the result is the same. Earth is dressed for the tropics, everywhere you look. You wander deeper into this sauna of life, your boots sinking into damp soil. Above you, the canopy drips with orchids, figs, and other flowering plants. Birds chatter in bright flashes of colour, darting from branch to branch. Their feathers glisten with blues, reds and golds, as though the forest themselves have learned to paint. A monkey-like figure, an early primate, leaps between branches, its tail curled for balance. It pauses long enough to stare at you, its eyes wide before vanishing with a squeal of laughter that echoes in the greenery. You can't help but smile. It feels like the forest itself is teasing you. Nearby, you stumble upon something stranger, a group of early horses, no bigger than dogs, picking their way delicately through the ferns. Their feet still carry multiple toes, though the middle one is growing stronger. You crouch and watch them nibble at leaves, ears flicking nervously at every sound. These are Eohippus, the dawn horses, more deer-like than the animals you know today. Fringe tidbit: one Victorian paleontologist once nicknamed them Hyracotherium, which translates awkwardly to little beast, as if his only impression was mild confusion. The name stuck for decades before scientists corrected it. You chuckle quietly. Imagine describing a horse as some sort of critter. The heat makes the air shimmer, and you wipe sweat from your brow. In the distance, a massive shadow moves between trees. At first, you think it's another coryphodon, but as it emerges, you recognize something stranger. Brontotheras, the so-called thunder beasts. They look like rhinos crossed with tapirs, bulky bodies with peculiar forked horns on their snouts. They travel in herds, their low grumbles carrying like distant thunder through the forest. You sit still, feeling the vibration through the soil, as if the earth itself is applauding their march. The seas of the Eocene are no less dramatic. As you reach a cliff overlooking the coast, You see waves breaking with a violence that hints at the life beneath. Whales, no longer awkward land walkers, cut the water with a streamlined grace. Basilosaurus, with its elongated body, dominates the ocean like a serpentine god. It breaches the surface, water cascading off its back, before diving with a force that rocks the shore. Birds cry overhead, and a penguin, taller than your shoulder, dives with a splash that looks almost comic compared to the majesty of the whale. And then there are the crocodiles. Not just the typical kind you might picture, but monstrous ones that thrive in the warmth. You watch one slide silently into a river, the ripple of its movement spreading wide. It waits with infinite patience, and when a mammal approaches for a drink, the strike is sudden, brutal, inevitable. You flinch at the splash, the violent churn of water, but then it's quiet again, as though nothing happened. The calm is unsettling, predation hidden beneath the surface, like a secret whispered only at the last second. Quirky fact, fossilized leaves from the Eocene Arctic show bite marks from insects, evidence that not only did crocodiles live there, but so did swarms of bugs. Imagine camping under a midnight sun with mosquitoes the size of your thumbnail, buzzing relentlessly. You shake your head. It makes modern camping woes feel tame. The forest air thickens as dusk falls. Cicadas drone, frogs croak, and as the heat seems to linger in your very bones. You find a fallen log to rest against, its bark slick with moss. Around you, fireflies flicker like tiny lanterns, painting the humid night with golden sparks. Above, the stars are faint, blurred by haze, but the moon glows large and orange through the canopy. You breathe deeply, the scent of damp leaves and orchids heavy in your lungs. Here, in this fevered greenhouse, life is lush, chaotic, excessive. Crocodiles at the poles, palms where glaciers should be, horses no bigger than dogs, or whales still experimenting with their shapes. It's a world that seems impossible, yet utterly real. And as you close your eyes, lulled by the symphony of insects and the humid weight of air, you realize the Eocene is Earth's grand masquerade, a time when the rules bent and life wore costumes it has never tried on again. The dawn air feels cooler now, thinner somehow, as if the Earth is slowly catching her breath after the greenhouse fever of the Eocene. You step out of the dripping forests and into a landscape that looks startlingly new. Wide open stretches of rolling fields, low hills dressed not in dense trees, but in grasses. This is the Oligocene and Miocene world. And what you're seeing is one of the greatest botanical revolutions in history, the rise of grasslands. It's subtle at first, just patches of tough green blades weaving into open clearings, but soon it spreads across valleys and plains like a tide you can't hold back. You crouch and touch the blades, their edges sharp enough to scratch your fingers. Grasses aren't just plants, they're engineers of ecosystems. With roots that dig deep and rhizomes that spread laterally, they anchor the soil, resist erosion, and hold water in ways forests never did. Their growth is stubborn, bouncing back from grazing or fire. Historians still argue whether grasses first spread because of changing climate, cooler, drier conditions, or whether grazing herbivores helped by disturbing the soil. Either way, the partnership between plant and eater is locked in now, and the planet will never look the same. The first animals you notice on these prairies are small herds of early horses, now taller and leaner than their Eocene cousins. Mesohippus trots across the open ground, its legs longer, its body more athletic. 3 toes still touch the soil, but the middle one carries the weight, the foreshadowing of hooves. They move nervously, always in groups, their ears swiveling to catch the faintest rustle. Out here, there's nowhere to hide. So speed is the only defense. You watch them break into a sudden gallop, hooves drumming the earth like a storm passing over a roof. The sound makes your chest vibrate. It's the first thunder of the plains. And what are plains without grazers? You see rhinos, some small and hornless, others colossal like Paraceratherium, nibbling on shrubs and young trees. You blink at its sheer scale, its neck stretching high to pluck leaves like a living crane. But grasses don't just attract browsers, they create grazers. Soon, lineages of antelope, camels, and eventually cattle will learn to feed on nothing but grass, their stomachs fermenting cellulose into life. For now, you glimpse their prototypes, slender-bodied herbivores testing the diet, their teeth wearing differently with every bite. Predators adapt in parallel. Across the field, a long-bodied carnivore crouches low, Hyenodon. It isn't a cat nor a dog, but something older, with jaws like steel traps. It stalks the herd of horses, eyes fixed, muscles coiled. When it charges, the plain erupts in chaos, hooves pounding, dust rising, shrieks splitting the air. One unlucky straggler falls behind and the predator's bite ends the chase. You shiver, then exhale slowly. Out here in the open, everything is faster, leaner, more dangerous. A quirky tidbit slips into your thoughts. Grasses contain silica, microscopic crystals that act like glass. Over time, chewing them wears down teeth. This forced herbivores to evolve high-crowned, ever-growing molars, what paleontologists call hypsodont teeth. In other words, grass invented dentistry. You grin at the irony. The endless war between salad and molar may be one of the most consequential arms races in history. The prairies hum with smaller life too. Burrows pepper the soil, home to rodents whose populations explode with the spread of grasses. Birds adapted for open skies wheel above, from vultures circling lazily to tiny songbirds darting low. One particularly striking figure catches your eye. A terror bird nearly 10 feet tall, striding across the field with predatory confidence. It pauses, head tilted, beak gleaming like an axe, then breaks into a run with surprising speed. You step back instinctively. This isn't a creature you want curious about you. Fringe fact, these flightless predators were apex hunters in South America for millions of years, proving that sometimes wings are optional when you have legs built like steel springs. By midday, the heat rises and the grasslands shimmer in waves of gold and green. Herds cluster around watering holes, where crocodiles, ever the opportunists, still wait with sinister patience. Mammals gather nervously, eyes darting, each sip of water a gamble. Life in the open comes with constant tension. No shadows to hide in, no trees to climb, only vigilance, speed and luck. You find yourself scanning the horizon alongside them, the paranoia strangely contagious. Historians still argue whether the spread of grasses triggered the great diversification of herbivores or whether herbivores drove the expansion of grasses by grazing. You laugh softly at the chicken and egg nature of the debate. It's less about who started it and more about how tightly the two are now locked together. Like dance partners, grass and grazer spin across the plains, inseparable, shaping each other with every step. As evening falls, the air cools, and the grasslands glow orange under the sinking sun. Herds graze calmly now, bellies full, while predators retreat into shadow. You sit in the tall grass, listening to the gentle crunch of chewing and the low murmurs of animals settling for the night. Fireflies blink between the blades, while the wind whispers across the fields like a lullaby. You close your eyes and breathe in the scent of dry grass and earth, realizing that this simple landscape, humble, repetitive, monotonous to some, will become the stage for countless dramas, from mammoth herds to human civilizations. Here, in the hush of the first true grasslands, the Cenozoic tightens its grip. Forests still exist, seas still teem, but the plains are spreading, rewriting diets, teeth speed, and survival itself. You rest your hand on the soil, warm from the day, and feel the pulse of change beating steady beneath your palm. The age of grass has begun, and with it, a new rhythm for life on Earth. The grasslands stretch endlessly behind you as you step into a terrain buzzing with tension. It isn't the quiet hum of grazing herds or the lazy flutter of birds, it's sharper, heavier, the presence of predators who now dominate the evolutionary stage. The Cenozoic has been generous to mammals and birds alike, and predators sharpen themselves in response. Taking forms so strange and terrifying, you wonder if evolution has a sense of dark humour. Tonight, you walk into their hunting grounds. The first figure you see is a saber-toothed cat, not the famous Smilodon yet, that comes later, but an older cousin, Nimrovids, prowling the edges of the grasslands. Its fangs curve down like ivory daggers, glinting faintly in the dusk. The animal moves low, its paws pressing silent patterns into the soil, every muscle coiled. When it pauses, tail twitching, you can almost hear the whisper of instinct, strike, strike, strike. Historians still argue whether those enormous fangs were used for stabbing throats, slashing bellies, or simply intimidating rivals, but in this moment, none of those possibilities feels reassuring. You keep very still, the air heavy with your own heartbeat. Not far away, another predator stomps across the plain, and you realise the cats don't have the monopoly on meanness. This is a terror bird to Tarnis Wallery, tall as a grown man, its head ending in a hooked beak designed for shearing flesh. It strides confidently, wings reduced to stubs, legs powerful as pistons. When it spots a small mammal scurrying, it lunges with shocking speed, snapping its prey up in a single strike. The crack of bone echoes across the field and you shiver. Flight may be optional, but hunger never is. And then there are the bear dogs, amphicyonids, roaming somewhere between categories. They look like oversized wolves with the heavy build of bears, their jaws lined with crushing teeth. A pack moves through the brush, shoulders brushing against each other, snouts sniffing for trails. One lifts its head and howls, the sound deeper and rougher than any wolf. And the herd animals in the distance scatter nervously. These predators combine stamina, bulk, and bite as if evolution couldn't decide between a sprinter or a bruiser and just built both into one body. You creep closer to a ridge where the view widens. Below, the drama plays out like a stage. Herds of horses and camels graze cautiously, always glancing towards the shadows. Predators circle the edges, waiting for stragglers, their patience infinite. The balance feels delicate, every creature on edge, as if one misplaced step could trigger a storm of claws and teeth. It's a different kind of ecosystem than the dinosaur-dominated past, less about overwhelming dominance, more about tactical pressure, a chessboard of hunter and hunted. A quirky tidbit drifts into your mind. Paleontologists once nicknamed some saber-toothed cats dirk-toothed versus scimitar-toothed, depending on the shape of their fangs. The terms sound almost whimsical, like something out of a fantasy role-playing game, but the reality was far from playful. Imagine living in a world where the options weren't short sword or longbow, but fangs shaped like a knife or fangs shaped like a machete. Evolution apparently had a flair for weapon design. Farther along the valley, you catch a glimpse of a different hunting strategy. Small canid-like creatures dart in groups, chasing prey not with brute strength but with teamwork. They look almost like foxes, their bodies lean, their movements synchronized. You realize this is the beginning of pack hunting behavior, a tactic that will one day define wolves and eventually human alliances with them. Watching them nip at the heels of a young horse, you sense the future echoing faintly in their playful yet deadly coordination. The night deepens, and with it, the predators grow bolder. Owls sweep silently above, their talons snatching rodents from the grass. A chorus of howls and screeches builds in the distance, each voice layered into a primal orchestra. You lie low in the tall grass, the blades scratching your cheeks, and feel the vibrations of movement and all around. Hooves pounding, paws padding, wings cutting the air. The plains are alive not only with grazing and chewing, but with pursuit, ambush, and a shorten. Historians still argue whether the rise of predators shaped herbivores more, or whether herbivores' speed and vigilance pushed predators to become sharper and swifter. You smirk softly at the endless chicken and egg problem, though here, it's really cat and horse. Watching the dance unfold, you suspect it's not one chasing the other, but both locked in step, each shaping the other endlessly. As the moon rises, casting silver light across the grass, you catch one final scene. A saber-toothed cat crouched beside a carcass, its fangs glistening as it tears through flesh. In the distance, a terror bird watches, pacing with frustration, unwilling to challenge directly. The air smells of blood, musk and dust, raw and real. You close your eyes, listening to the crunch of bones, and let the sounds of predators lull you. It's grim, yes, but it's also balance. This is how ecosystems breathe. Here in the predator's age, the plains echo with sharp claws and curved fangs, with patience and sudden violence. You nestle deeper into the grass, hidden from sight, and realize that sleep comes easier, not because the world is safe, but because it is alive with rhythm, tension, and purpose. The wind cuts colder tonight, carrying with it the scent of snow and stone. You step from the plains into a world where seasons have sharpened, where warmth no longer dominates without challenge. Ice is creeping across the planet, slowly but insistently, reshaping landscapes and rewriting the rules of survival. Glaciers carve valleys, mountains wear white crowns, and animals grow heavy coats and bulkier bodies. You shiver as you climb a ridge, your breath visible, realizing you've arrived in the epoch of giants shaped by frost. The first shadows you see are massive, lumbering across the tundra with quiet determination. Mammoths, enormous, shaggy, their curved tusks gleaming pale in the weak sunlight. They move in herds, calves nestled between mothers, the air filled with low rumbles that vibrate in your chest. One stops to dig through the snow with its tusks, tossing powder aside to uncover buried grasses. You watch the clever efficiency, the communal protection of the group, and it hits you here is a blueprint of survival honed by ice. Nearby, a mastodon grazes, shorter and stockier than the mammoth, with straighter tusks and different teeth for browsing twigs and shrubs. The two look similar at a glance, but their diets and habits keep them apart, avoiding competition. Historians still argue whether these distinctions mattered much to predators or to humans later on, but for now, the diversity of proboscideans is astonishing. Earth doesn't settle for one kind of elephant. She drafts several, each with its own quirks. You crunch through the snow and stumble upon something even stranger, a ground sloth megatherium. It towers as tall as a 2-story house when it rears up, claws long and curved like scythes. It drags branches down with effortless strength, chewing leaves slowly as if time bends around it. You gape at the sheer absurdity, a sloth the size of a bus lumbering across the frost. Fringe tidbit. Some early accounts suggest humans may have encountered these creatures in South America, inspiring myths of giant hairy monsters. You grin softly. Sometimes folklore is just paleontology with bad lighting. The predators of this cold world are no less impressive. Smilodon, the true saber-tooth, prowls the edges of herds, its muscular body coiled, fangs gleaming like ivory knives. It's stocky, built not for chasing but for ambushing, wrestling prey to the ground with raw strength. You imagine its strike, a leap, a grapple, a deep slash to the throat. The thought sends a chill colder than the wind down your spine. And yet, despite its menace, you can't help but admire the sheer elegance of its design. Wolves hunt here too, their packs tighter, their howls sharper in the frosty air. They trail herds for days, wearing prey down with relentless endurance. You listen to their chorus ripple across the tundra, each note threading through the night like a woven net. It's eerie but also oddly comforting, the sound of cooperation in a landscape that demands it. Birds adapt as well. Ravens follow mammoth herds, scavenging scraps from kills. Owls sweep silently across the snow, talons catching voles that dart beneath. High above, condors and vultures circle, patient as always. The skies may be cold, but the scavenger's strategy thrives in any age. Historians still argue whether the ice ages were triggered primarily by orbital changes, Milankovitch cycles, or whether tectonic rearrangements and atmospheric shifts were equally crucial. Standing here, with snow underfoot and glaciers gleaming on the horizon, you realise it hardly matters which cause tipped the scale. What matters is the transformation. Ice reshaping not only landscapes, but in bodies, behaviours, and the possibilities. The cold is relentless, but life adapts with creativity. Musk oxen huddle close, their thick coats steaming faintly in the chill. Bison stamp through drifts, carving trails for smaller animals to follow. Even rodents survive by tunnelling beneath the snow, insulated burrows hiding caches of seeds. You kneel and brush aside frost to find tiny tracks leading into the ground, delicate as stitching on fabric. Survival here is written in both grandeur and detail, from mammoth herds to mouse tunnels. A quirky fact drifts into your mind. Some Ice Age beavers were the size of black bears, their teeth designed for gnawing through thick trunks. You imagine one dragging a whole tree into a river, building dams that could flood valleys. A giant rodent as an ecosystem engineer. It sounds like a joke, but it's real. Nature apparently decided that if sloths could be monstrous, so could beavers. As night deepens, you huddle under a ledge, listening to the groans of ice shifting in the distance. The stars are brilliant, sharp in the clear air, constellations etched with icy precision. In the valley below, mammoths rumble softly, their silhouettes moving like dark mountains across the snow. Wolves answer with howls, the sound weaving into the wind until it feels like the whole world is singing. You close your eyes, wrapped in the chorus of giants and hunters, and let the cold settle into your bones. This is the Ice Age, harsh, beautiful, brimming with creatures larger than imagination. And though the glaciers creep forward, freezing rivers and carving stone, the land is far from dead. It is alive with resilience, each breath of frost met with breath of warm survival. The cold morning air carries the faint rustle of feathers, and as you stir, you realise the sky above you is alive with wings. Birds have already conquered the forests, the plains, and even the seas, but here, in the middle stretches of the Cenozoic, they diversify with astonishing boldness. Some are tiny songsters, weaving nests from twigs and grasses. Others are massive shadows blotting out the sun. Tonight's journey belongs to them, the birds of night and thunder. An owl perches silently on a branch just above your head, its round eyes glowing amber in the pale dawn light. It swivels its head nearly all the way around, scanning the meadow below. A vole makes the mistake of moving, and before you can blink, the owl's talons strike. The sound is faint, almost polite but deadly effective. You feel a chill, not from the cold but from the eerie efficiency. Owls have already perfected silent flight, feathers adapted to muffle the sound of air rushing over wings. Imagine an assassin gliding without a whisper. It's no wonder these nocturnal hunters thrive. As the day brightens, the skies roar with a different kind of presence. Above the plains, massive condor-like birds spiral upward, their wingspans stretching wider than you can believe. Teratorns, giant relatives of condors, rule these skies, some spanning over 12 feet tip to tip. You shield your eyes from the sun and watch one circle lazily, its silhouette casting a shadow that sweeps across the grazing herds. Fringe tidbit: fossils suggest teratorns may have hunted like eagles, not just scavenged, swooping down to grab some more prey with talons strong enough to crush bone. You laugh softly at the thought condors as terrifying sky snatchers instead of patient cleanup crews. Then the ground itself shakes with the approach of true thunder birds. In South America, you encounter forest racids, flightless predators taller than you, with beaks shaped like butcher's cleavers. One strides through the grass, each step deliberate, head tilting side to side as it searches for movement. When it spots a rabbit-like mammal, it dashes forward, its legs blurring. The strike is swift, the prey silenced in an instant. You stay very still, your heart pounding. It's strange enough to accept that dinosaurs are gone. It's stranger still to realize their cousins are still stomping around, dressed in feathers instead of scales. Historians still argue whether terrorbirds use their massive beaks to crush skulls or to hack repeatedly at prey like a woodcutter splitting logs. Watching one slam its beak into a carcass, you suspect the truth is both. The sound is unsettling, a hollow crack that reverberates across the plain. You shiver, then smirk at the absurdity. Evolution apparently handed these birds the biological equivalent of a battle axe and said, "Good luck out there." Back near the river, smaller but no less remarkable birds fill the air. Kingfishers dive headfirst, wings folded, their splashes sending ripples through the calm water. Storks stalk the shallows, their long beaks snapping at fish with perfect timing. Flocks of ducks paddle nervously, quacking in chatter that feels oddly familiar. You find yourself chuckling at the contrast. On one end of the spectrum, battle-axe birds and winged giants. On the other, fluffy quackers floating in circles like feathered comedians. Balance, it seems, is part of nature's humour. Night returns, and with it the hunters of darkness. Owls take their stations again, perching silently, eyes gleaming. Their calls echo through the cold air, deep and haunting. The sound mixes with the distant rumble of mammoths, the howls of wolves, and the faint whispers of the wind. You lean back against a tree and feel the forest vibrating with voices. Each one is a thread in the fabric of the night, a symphony that doesn't require instruments. Quirky fact, in some fossil sites, paleontologists have found evidence of owls swallowing prey whole and leaving behind neat little pellets of bones and fur. Imagine stumbling upon a pile of those and realizing an owl's midnight snack menu has survived for millions of years. You grin at the thought. It's as if the bird left Yelp reviews of its meals for future scientists. You drift closer to the edge of sleep, lulled by the wing beats above. A teratorn glides silently in the moonlight, its shadow cutting across the ground. A terror bird lets out a guttural call in the distance, low and resonant. The air feels charged, thick with wings and whispers, as though the night itself has taken flight. Here, in the age of birds' boldest experiments, the sky and ground are claimed by feathers both delicate and deadly. Some serenade, some scavenge, some strike with thunder. You close your eyes beneath the watchful gaze of owls, comforted and unsettled all at once, knowing that as long as wings beat above, the earth will never be truly silent. You wake to the soft gurgle of water, the kind of sound that seems to roll endlessly without beginning or end. It draws you downhill until the forest parts, and there it is, a river so wide it feels like an inland sea. Mist rises off its surface, glowing in the morning light, and the smell of damp reeds mixes with mud and moss. This is no ordinary stream. It is one of the great freshwater systems of the Cenozoic, lifelines that stretch across continents, shaping the creatures who live along their banks. You crouch by the edge, trail your fingers in the cool current, and feel the pulse of life surging through it. The river is busy. At the margins, reeds sway where turtles bask, their shells dark and glistening. One slides into the water with a soft plop, disappearing beneath the surface. Frogs sit tucked into the mud, throats bulging, releasing deep croaks that echo like drum beats. A school of fish flashes past, their scales catching the sun in a rainbow shimmer. You watch the rhythm and realise that rivers are not just scenery here. They are highways of survival, feeding predators and prey alike, stitching ecosystems together. You spot movement on the far bank, a massive shadow waddling awkwardly on land before plunging into the water. At first you think it's a crocodile, but then you recognise the proportions. It's an ancient beaver, asteroids the size of a black bear. It chews on a log with oversized teeth, gnawing so powerfully you can hear the crunch across the water. Fringe tidbit. Some paleontologists suggest these giant beavers may not have built dams like their modern relatives. Imagine an animal evolving the perfect toolkit for carpentry and then deciding, nah, I'll just swim. You grin at the irony. Evolution doesn't always read the instruction manual. In the shallows, smaller mammals scurry, muskrat-like creatures, otters, and even early relatives of hippos testing their bulk in the paedo. You watch one plump body slip beneath the surface, its fur shining with trapped air bubbles, and it vanishes with playful ease. The river is as much theirs as the land's, a reminder that water always invites second homes. The predators come next. You hear the faint hiss of scales on reeds and spot a snake, thick-bodied, coiled on a low branch above the current. It strikes at a passing fish, dragging it from the water in a flurry of splashes. Not far away, a crocodile lurks, eyes just above the surface, waiting with infinite patience. When a young mammal bends to drink, the strike is brutal. A crash of water, a flailing struggle, and then silence. You take a step back from the bank, heart pounding. Rivers may feed life, but they also devour it. Historians still argue whether river systems like these influenced early mammal evolution more than forests or plains. Some suggest rivers provided migration corridors, allowing species to spread and adapt. Others argue rivers were barriers, isolating populations on either side and forcing divergence. Either way, you can see how powerful this watery artery is, both bridge and wall, opportunity and risk. Birds thrive here too. Herons stalk slowly in the shallows, stabbing fish with lightning beaks. Ducks paddle in lazy circles, gossiping noisily. Kingfishers dart from branches, plunging headfirst into the current with perfect precision. Overhead, flocks of cranes call out, their cries carrying far across the valley. The river is a stage and every bird has a role, from graceful dancer to rowdy comedian. A quirky fact surfaces. Fossilized river sediments often preserve not just bones, but pollen, seeds, and even footprints. Entire snapshots of ecosystems are sealed in mud, waiting millions of years to be rediscovered. You imagine some future paleontologist holding a slab of stone, marvelling at the delicate imprint of a frog's hop, unaware that you once sat here watching that same frog croak in the reeds. Time feels strangely circular in the river's company. As dusk falls, the river changes tone. Insects rise in swarms, their wings buzzing like static over the water. Bats emerge from hollow trees, sweeping low to catch the feast. Fireflies blink above the reeds, their glow reflected in rippling currents. Frogs chorus louder, and in the distance you hear the splash of something large. Perhaps a beaver, perhaps something more sinister. You lean against a tree, letting the sounds wash over you like a lullaby, woven from hawks, chirps, and flowing water. The stars appear faintly mirrored in the surface of the river. You watch them ripple with each current, constellations bending and reforming, as though the sky itself is playing in the water. Your eyes grow heavy, and you realise this river, with all its life and danger, is also a cradle of calm. Its mystery isn't in monsters, but in its quiet persistence, a flow that never ends, shaping Earth as surely as ice or fire. You close your eyes to the murmur of the current, letting the river carry your thoughts downstream. In this place of reeds, ripples, and shadows, the Cenozoic whispers not in roars or thunders but in flowing water, steady and eternal. The forest canopy rises above you like a cathedral, branches arching and leaves filtering the sunlight into shifting mosaics on the ground. The air is thick with humidity, buzzing with insects, and fragrant with the scent of ripe fruit. You crane your neck upward, and there they are, primates, lively and restless, darting through the trees with a confidence that feels almost playful. After so many chapters of lumbering giants and thundering predators, this moment feels different, lighter, quicker, more curious. Tonight, you follow the monkeys in their emerald kingdom. A small figure leaps overhead, tail curled like a question mark. It lands with perfect grace, then immediately plucks a fruit and stuffs it into its mouth, juice dripping down its chin. This is an early New World monkey, descended from primates that somehow rafted across the Atlantic from Africa to South America on mats of vegetation. Historians still argue whether these journeys were improbable accidents or inevitable migrations. Either way, the sight of their descendants here, swinging, squealing and thriving, feels like watching evolution roll dice and come up lucky. On another branch, a group of lemur-like creatures huddles together, grooming one another with patient hands. Their eyes are huge, glowing in the dim under-canopy light, and their fingers are nimble, combing through fur with deliberate care. You watch the intimacy of the gesture, social bonds written not in words but in touch. Primates are already testing the idea that survival isn't only about claws and teeth, it's also about cooperation, trust and shared warmth. You notice how their hands differ from other mammals. Fingers are long, thumbs are posable, pad-sensitive. One reaches out to grab a branch and you realise the action is eerily familiar. It's the same motion you make when picking up your coffee mug. A small, almost silly thought crosses your mind. The journey from fruit-picking monkey to smartphone-scrolling human starts with this simple grasp. You chuckle quietly, though the monkeys are too busy bickering over bananas to care about your existential musings. Farther along, you see another scene, a mother carrying her infant clinging to her belly, tiny fingers locked tightly in fur. She moves with careful precision, hopping from branch to branch, pausing only to sniff the air for danger. In that gesture, protecting the helpless, you see a foreshadowing of countless generations to come. Mammoths may rule the plains, terror birds may dominate the grasslands, but here in the canopy, the story of intelligence and family is being written, leaf by leaf. Fringe tidbit: some early primates had nails instead of claws, a small change that allowed them to handle fruit and branches with finesse. Scientists debate whether this adaptation arose primarily for feeding or climbing, but either way, it was a game changer. You glance at your own nails and wiggle your fingers, amused that something so mundane is a relic of ancient evolutionary innovation. The canopy is far from peaceful, though. A shriek erupts as a monkey narrowly escapes a snake lunging from the branches. The snake coils back, disappointed, while the troop scatters noisily. Tails flicking. Danger never disappears, it just shifts shape. Birds of prey circle overhead too, their eyes scanning for movement. You watch one dive, talons outstretched, only to be foiled by a monkey's last-second leap. The forest erupts in alarm calls, the sound echoing like an alarm system installed by nature herself. You take a seat on a mossy log, head tilted back, and let your eyes follow the chaos above. The monkeys are constantly in motion, leaping, swinging, grabbing, chattering. They seem restless, as if idleness itself is forbidden. And yet, amid the noise, you catch glimpses of remarkable moments. A juvenile practicing jumps alone, a pair sharing food, a group working together to drive away a predator. Intelligence is budding here, not in tools or fire yet, but in behaviour, in play, in community. Historians still argue whether the tropical forests themselves pushed primates toward this path. Some suggest the abundance of fruit demanded memory skills, knowing which trees ripen when. Others propose the three-dimensional maze of branches forced primates to sharpen coordination and planning. Watching them now, you suspect it's both. Each leap requires calculation, each meal demands strategy, each social squabble teaches hierarchy. The forest is both playground and classroom. As dusk settles, the canopy glows with streaks of gold. The monkeys grow quieter, gathering into clusters, their silhouettes outlined against the fading sky. Birds settle too, their last calls echoing before the hush of night. Insects hum louder, filling the void while fireflies blink between trunks. You lean back, eyes heavy, the rustle of leaves above like a lullaby. Here, in the treetops of the Cenozoic, life is smaller than the mammoths and stranger than the terror birds, but no less prominent. The monkeys do not thunder or roar. They chatter, leap, and cling. And in their movements, you see the first sparks of curiosity, of society, of a path that leads, impossibly, to us. You close your eyes to their chorus of squeaks and chatter, letting the canopy cradle you in its restless, dreaming arms. The morning light filters softly through the forest canopy. Warmer here, drier too. You step onto a landscape where the trees thin, the air feels wider, and the ground opens into scattered woodlands. Something about the atmosphere feels different, more deliberate, as though evolution has slowed its restless sketching and started refining its drafts. This is the stage where apes begin to take center stage, reshaping the story of mammals not through bulk or claws, but through minds, hands, and a new way of moving. You spot them almost immediately, larger than the monkeys you saw before, shoulders broad, arms long, movements slower but more purposeful. One sits perched on a low branch, tearing into a cluster of fruit with thick fingers. Its face is flat compared to the snouts of earlier primates, its eyes forward, intelligent, almost unsettlingly familiar. This is Proconsul, an early ape from the Miocene, straddling the line between monkey and hominid. It walks along the branch without a tail for balance, a small but revolutionary difference. You feel a ripple of recognition. It looks like a relative, distant yet undeniable. Another swings gracefully overhead, brachiating from branch to branch. Its arms are powerful, its hands curved perfectly for grasping. Watching it move, you understand the evolutionary trade. Shorter trunks, flexible shoulders, and longer arms are the price of abandoning tails. They are built not for scurrying through canopies, but for commanding them, claiming space with deliberate motion. Historians still argue whether the loss of tails was about climbing efficiency, balance, or sheer evolutionary accident. Whatever the reason, it's a detail that will ripple forward into every ape, including you. You sit under a fig tree as a small troop gathers above. Two juveniles wrestle, tumbling across branches in playful mock battles. A mother grooms her child with slow, careful strokes, plucking insects from its fur and nibbling them absent-mindedly. A large male watches from a higher branch, his posture calm but commanding, every movement radiating authority. The forest feels quieter here, less chaotic than the monkey canopies, as though apes already carry a sense of gravity with them. A quirky tidbit floats into your thoughts. In the Miocene, apes were far more diverse than they are today. Dozens of species thrived across Africa, Europe, and Asia, far more than the handful we know now. Some were tiny, tree-dwelling nibblers, others were massive ground walkers. You chuckle softly. Imagine a world where instead of just gorillas and chimpanzees, there's an ape for every niche, like a bizarre evolutionary catalogue. But climate shifts and competition would later prune this family tree, leaving only a few survivors. You walk further into the woodlands, where the air feels drier and the grass pushes higher between trees. Here you notice another change. Some apes are experimenting with moving differently. On the ground, they shuffle awkwardly on all fours, knuckles pressing into the soil. But when one pauses, it straightens briefly on two legs, scanning the horizon. The motion is clumsy, fleeting, but unmistakable. For the first time, you see the shadow of upright posture flicker into existence. Nearby, a group feasts on fruit scattered across the ground. They use their hands with remarkable precision, peeling skins, cracking shells, discarding what they don't want. One bangs a nut against a rock until it splits, then licks the inside eagerly. It's not tool-making yet. Not really, but it's close. You grin at the thought. The first hammer is just an ape with good aim and a stubborn appetite. The predators haven't vanished. You catch sight of a large cat slinking through the tall grass, muscles rippling, eyes locked on the troop. The apes respond with shrieks, scrambling into the trees, their unity immediate and effective. A few even throw branches down, a primitive act of defiance. The cat snarls, thwarted, and slinks away. You sit in awe, not just at the survival, but at the spark of intention, of defending as a group instead of scattering alone. Historians still argue whether these early apes were already testing the beginnings of complex social structures, or if what you're seeing is just instinct dressed up as intelligence. Watching them, you suspect the truth is somewhere in between. Grooming, playing, protecting, all of it hints at a deeper current, the beginnings of community as strategy, not just habit. As evening falls, you find yourself beside a watering hole where several apes gather. They dip their hands into the shallows, splashing each other, then settle with satisfied grunts. The air is filled with a softer hum than the predator-rich plains or the insect-heavy rivers. Here the rhythm is slower, the stakes quieter. The apes seem at peace, as though their power isn't in teeth or size, but in the way they hold space together. You lie back on the warm ground, stars peeking through the branches above. The sounds of grooming clicks and playful squeals lull you into calm. This isn't the thunder of mammoths or the menace of terror birds. It's something subtler, something building quietly. In the silence between their calls, you can almost hear the whispers of future fires, tools, words. The apes are taking center stage, and though they don't know it, they are rehearsing for humanity. The air feels drier now, less like a humid jungle, and more like a savanna stretching wide beneath the sun. You step into this new landscape where grasses roll like a golden sea, and trees cluster only in scattered groves. It is a world of openness, of long horizons, and of new challenges for creatures accustomed to the shadows of forests. Here, in these shifting habitats, the first wanderers begin to step out, ancestors of humans, testing a life beyond the canopy. You see them at the edge of a clearing, small-bodied, upright for moments at a time, their silhouettes strange against the waving grass. They are Australopithecines, though the names will come much later, creatures like Australopithecus afarensis. Ancestors still unsure whether they belong to the trees or the plains. One female stands tall for a few seconds, scanning the horizon before dropping back to all fours. The gesture is clumsy, fleeting, but purposeful. Her wide, searching eyes remind you of a lookout scanning traffic before crossing a busy street. It's survival written in posture. A group of them moves together, cautious yet determined. They still climb trees at night for safety, but during the day they forage across the grasslands, gathering roots, fruits and tubers, and perhaps scavenging meat from carcasses left by predators. One bends low, digs with a stick and pulls out a plump root. It gnaws at it eagerly, dirt clinging to its lips. Another finds bones cracked by carnivores and licks at the marrow. No fire yet, no stone tools, just hands, teeth and persistence. And somehow it works. You can't help but smile at the simplicity of their strategies. It's the survivalist starter pack. Use whatever's around, stick together, and keep an eye out for lions. And speaking of lions, a shadow ripples in the tall grass. A large cat crouches, muscles taut, eyes fixed. The group erupts in sharp cries, scrambling to the nearest tree. They cling to branches, hearts hammering as the predator prowls below. For minutes it waits, tail twitching before slinking away in frustration. The primates descend cautiously, chatter nervous, but soon they resume their foraging. Fear lingers, but life demands boldness. Historians still argue whether upright walking developed primarily for spotting predators, carrying food, or reducing heat exposure under the sun. Watching them sway between 2 and 4 legs, you suspect it's all of the above. The grasslands demand versatility. An upright posture is just one of many tricks. A quirky tidbit comes to mind. Bipedal footprints from Laeteli in Tanzania, preserved in volcanic ash nearly 4 million years old, show a small group walking side by side. The impressions are so detailed you can even see the arches of their feet. Imagine a snapshot of ancient family life, captured forever in stone. The troop pauses at a watering hole, the surface rippling with fish and dragonflies. They drink cautiously, glancing nervously at the reeds. Crocodiles are never far. One individual dips a hand and splashes water on its face, blinking at the coolness. Another tests the idea of tossing stones into the shallows, perhaps to scare off dangers. It's not yet tool use in the modern sense, but it's a rehearsal, a preview of what will come. The sounds of the savannah fill your ears, buzzing insects, distant calls of cranes, the grumble of grazing antelope. Herds move across the horizon, shapes silhouetted against the setting sun, zebras, wildebeest-like mammals, elephants with shorter tusks. The Australopithecines watch them with curiosity but keep their distance. They are too small to hunt, too vulnerable to risk, but the animals are part of their world nonetheless, teaching them the rhythms of the plains. Night approaches, and the group climbs into a stand of acacia trees. They build nests of branches, crude but sturdy enough to cradle them off the ground. The cries of predators echo across the plains. Hyenas cackling, lions roaring, owls hooting. Safe in their trees, the early hominins huddle close, their small bodies silhouetted against the moon. You watch them settle, and you sense the tension. They are not yet masters of their world, but they are not entirely prey either. They are something in between, wanderers suspended between vulnerability and promise. Quirky fringe thought. Some researchers speculate that these early ancestors may have occasionally carried sticks or bones as crude deterrents, waving them to scare predators. Imagine a tiny primate, barely 4 feet tall, brandishing a stick at a saber-tooth like a medieval peasant facing a dragon. Ridiculous. And yet perhaps the seed of courage begins here, in gestures too small to matter at the time but enormous in hindsight. As you lie back on the ground, the stars glittering overhead, you think of the path being carved. No fire yet, no art, no speech. Just footsteps across grasslands, cautious experiments with posture and tools, and the beginnings of community. It is humble, fragile and uncertain, but it is also unstoppable. The first wanderers have stepped out, and the savannah hums with the quiet rhythm of a future being born. The sky glows with a softer light now, the kind that comes at twilight. And you realise you've walked into a later chapter of the Cenozoic, one that feels both familiar and alien. Shadows lengthen across the plains, and in those shadows figures move that look uncannily human, but are not quite us. This is the age of twilight hunters, Neanderthals, Denisovans and early Homo sapiens, sharing the world for a brief complicated moment. You hear them before you see them, low voices, rhythmic carrying across the wind. A small group of Neanderthals is huddled near a fire, the flames crackling, sparks rising into the night. They are shorter and stockier than modern humans, their bodies built for cold endurance. One sharpens a spear with deliberate strokes, the stone edge catching the firelight. Another hums softly while gnawing on a strip of roasted meat. Their faces are heavy-browed, their noses wide, but the expressions are unmistakably human. Focus, fatigue, even contentment. Not far away, in a cave tucked into a limestone ridge, faint paintings line the walls. Shapes of animals, bison, horses, even lions, etched in ochre and charcoal. Historians still argue whether the earliest cave art belongs to Homo sapiens alone or if Neanderthals also painted their stories on stone. Standing here, you can't help but believe both groups left their marks, their imaginations spilling into pigments as naturally as breath. A fringe tidbit drifts through your thoughts. In one Spanish cave, handprints thought to belong to Neanderthals press red outlines into rock, whispers of individuality frozen in stone. You place your palm against the wall and for a moment time collapses. The night is alive with hunters. You follow a small band as they creep through tall grass, spears in hand, their target, a woolly rhinoceros grazing under the moonlight. The group spreads in silence, gestures replacing words, strategy pulsing through their movements. One distracts, another flanks, and then an eruption. Spears fly, shouts ring out. The rhino bellows, furious and wounded. The struggle is brutal, dangerous, but coordinated. When it falls, the hunters erupt in cries of triumph, their breath steaming in the cold air. You watch, awestruck. This is no longer scavenging, it is planned, cooperative hunting, written in the blood and sweat of twilight. And yet it isn't only violence that defines them. Back at the fire you see tenderness. A child nestled against its mother, soot smudged on its cheek. An elder sits nearby, bones creaking, but eyes sharp, passing down knowledge with gestures and grunts. A pair of hunters share a laugh, teeth flashing white in the firelight. Humanity, it seems, is born not just in survival, but in connection, in the warmth between danger and darkness. Meanwhile, elsewhere in this epoch, Homo sapiens are emerging. Slimmer, taller, their tools more refined, their art more elaborate. They too paint caves, carve bone flutes, adorn themselves with shells. You sense tension in the air, different species overlapping, sometimes interbreeding, sometimes competing. Historians still argue why Neanderthals disappeared while Homo sapiens endured. Was it climate, disease, assimilation, or simple bad luck? Perhaps it was all of these braided together into inevitability. The Denisovans remain ghostly presences here, their bones scarce, their traces hidden mostly in DNA. You cannot see them clearly, but you know they are here, inhabiting caves in Asia, leaving behind fragments of tools, teeth, and genes that still echo in modern people of the Pacific. You smile softly, realizing that extinction doesn't mean vanishing. It can mean absorption, memory carried in blood. A quirky fact slips into your thoughts. In some burials, Neanderthals placed flowers with their dead. Whether symbolic or practical, it suggests a tenderness, a reverence for life beyond its end. Imagine standing in a frozen valley, hands full of wildflowers, laying them over a body while snow drifts silently around you. That gesture, humble and heartbreaking, collapses any imagined distance between them and us. The night deepens and the hunters rest. Stars blaze above, clearer than in any modern city, the Milky Way sprawling like spilled silver dust. The fire crackles low, painting their faces in orange glow. A soft hum rises again, perhaps song, perhaps story, carrying into the darkness like a thread of hope. You close your eyes and let it wash over you, a lullaby born not in safety but in resilience. Here, in the Twilight Age, the line between human and almost human blurs. Hunters stalk mammoths, artists stain caves, families gather around fires. The world is colder, harsher, but also richer with imagination. You breathe in the smoke, the sweat, the night air, and you understand the torch has been lit, flickering in the hands of many species, passed down in whispers until it reaches you. The air is heavy with change, as though the planet itself sighs under a shifting weight. You walk across a plain where bones lie scattered, bleached by the sun, too many to belong to chance. This is the end of giants, the slow farewell to creatures that once defined the Ice Age. The mammoths, mastodons, ground sloths and armoured glyptodons linger here. But their reign is faltering, pressured by both climate and the strange new hunters who now stalk the earth with fire and strategy. A herd of mammoths trudges across the horizon, their silhouettes black against the setting sun. Calves shuffle between towering adults, tusks curling like ivory crescents. They rumble softly, their voices low and resonant. But something about their movement feels weary. The grasses are thinner now, the seasons harsher. Ice retreats, then surges back unpredictably. The world is unstable, and the mammoths wear that instability in their tired gait. Historians still argue whether climate alone could have ended them, or if humans pressed the final blow. Watching them here, you suspect the answer is both. Nearby, a glyptodon lumbers by. A massive armadillo the size of a small car, its shell thick as stone. It digs clumsily for roots, tail swinging like a spiked club. You chuckle softly, imagining one of these creatures defending itself by backing into predators like a medieval tank. Yet even its armour isn't enough. The climate shifts reduce its food, and hunters learn to pierce its defences. No shell, no matter how thick, can protect against persistence and fire. On a slope, a giant ground sloth drags branches down with hooked claws, its fur matted with ice. It chews slowly, eyes half-lidded, as though time itself moves differently in its body. Fringe tidbit. Some early humans may have encountered these sloths alive in South America, carving petroglyphs of towering clawed beasts that match their appearance uncannily. Imagine telling that story by firelight. We saw a creature taller than a house with claws like sickles. No wonder myths of monsters endure. The predators of this world are struggling too. Saber-toothed cats, once rulers of ambush, find prey scarcer. Packs of dire wolves prowl the edges of herds, their howls desperate, their bodies lean with hunger. One pack circles a weakened bison, bringing it down with coordinated bites. But the victory feels fleeting. The great beasts they once relied upon are dwindling, and with them, the predator Shidator's future unravels. You watch the wolves rip into the carcass, their breath steaming in the cold, and feel the weight of inevitability. The human hunters, however, are everywhere. You see them crouched in tall grass, spears tipped with stone points sharper than fangs. They move deliberately, communicating with glances and gestures. One carries a torch, its flames licking the night air. Another carries a bundle of hide. Their advantage isn't strength or speed, but patience, planning and numbers. They drive herds into traps, tire beasts with relentless pursuit, and use fire to reshape the land itself. The age of fang and tusk is ending, replaced by the age of strategy. Historians still argue whether human hunting alone caused the extinction of so many Ice Age giants, or whether rapid warming pushed ecosystems beyond their breaking point. Some say it was a 1-2 punch. Climate softened the beasts, and humans struck the final blow. Looking at the mammoths dwindling in the distance, you sense the sadness of both. Nature's rhythms and human ambition collided, and the giants fell silent. You pause at a shallow lake where bones jut from the mud like broken timbers. A mammoth's tusk curls upward, half buried. Birds perch on it, their feathers ruffled by the breeze. The water ripples, reflecting both sky and death. It feels less like a graveyard and more like a memory etched into the land itself. A quirky fact slips into your mind. Frozen carcasses of mammoths in Siberia have been found with undigested buttercups in their mouths, as though they died mid-meal. It's a haunting detail, giants brought down not by gradual fading but by sudden, brutal shifts. You picture a calf plucking flowers, unaware it's one of the last of its kind. The image lingers, heavy and quiet. Night deepens and you sit on a rock overlooking the plain. The stars shine cold and brilliant, indifferent to the drama below. Somewhere a wolf howls, its voice lonely, unanswered. In the distance a fire flickers, human hunters camped with their spoils laughing softly, their shadows dancing on the ground. The mammoths keep moving, their silhouettes smaller now, swallowed by darkness. You close your eyes and hear it. The end of giants is not a roar, but a fading, a hush, as massive footsteps grow fewer. The ground is still. The air carries only echoes, and the night belongs not to titans, but to smaller, cleverer beings who carry fire in their hands. The silence after the giants fades into something gentler, almost deceptively calm. You walk across a landscape that feels strangely familiar. Fields of waving grasses, forests of oak and pine, rivers winding lazily through valleys. The air is warmer now, the glaciers retreating, the climate settling into a rhythm that will cradle the next great story. This is the Holocene, the epoch of warmth and relative stability, the one that makes civilization possible. The Earth exhales after millennia of ice, and in that breath, humanity builds its world. You pass through a meadow dotted with wildflowers, where herds of antelope graze under a broad sky. Deer flit at the edges of the forest, ears twitching at your approach. Birds call overhead, hawks wheeling, geese honking in noisy flocks. Compared to the thunder of mammoths and the menace of saber-toothed cats, it feels subdued, even modest. But don't be fooled. This is the quiet stage upon which humans will rehearse their great experiments. Farming, cities, empires. You probably won't survive long enough to see all of it, but you're here to watch the first sparks. At the edge of a riverbank you see them, people, small groups gathered around huts of reeds and mud. They no longer wander endlessly, they stay put, planting seeds in cleared soil, tending goats and sheep. The first farms are fragile. Crops thin, herds small, yet the idea is revolutionary. Instead of chasing food, food is coaxed to stay. You kneel and watch a farmer scatter grain into the furrows, then pat the earth with hands worn by sun and labour. Historians still argue whether farming was a desperate necessity or an inspired choice, but here it feels both, an act of hope against hunger. The animals have changed too. Dogs trot beside humans, tails wagging, their partnership forged in hunts and campfires. Cows graze in pens, goats bleat, pigs root in the soil. Wolves, once howling hunters, now share scraps at the edge of villages. You chuckle softly at the thought. The Ice Age's predators have traded ferocity for belly rubs and leftover stew. Quirky tidbit, archaeologists have found ancient burials where dogs lie beside humans, honoured as family. It seems loyalty carved its place in history long before leashes. You wander further and find signs of craft. Stone blades sharper, pottery lined with patterns, baskets woven tight. In caves and on cliff walls, people paint scenes of herds, hunts and spirits. The art is simpler than the grand murals of Ice Age caves, but it carries a different weight. These are not just stories of survival, they are symbols of ownership, identity, faith. The Holocene hums with imagination made permanent. The climate lends its hand. Warmth stretches growing seasons. Rivers flood predictably, soils enrich. Civilizations begin to cluster along fertile valleys, the Nile, the Tigris, the Yellow River. You see boats carved from logs drifting on calm waters, carrying grain and fish. Smoke rises from hearths, curling into the sky like the signatures of new societies. Stability begets surplus, surplus begets cities. You glance at the horizon and sense it, walls, temples and towers waiting to rise. And yet nature still asserts herself. Floods sweep through fields, locusts devour crops, drought cracks the soil. People adapt, invent irrigation, store food, call upon gods to explain what they cannot control. The relationship between humans and Earth becomes a dialogue, sometimes gentle, sometimes violent. You realise that stability does not mean peace, it means a rhythm steady enough for ambition to grow. Historians still argue whether the Holocene deserves to be called a distinct epoch or whether it is merely the latest warm interglacial in Earth's longer cycles. You tilt your head at the debate, amused. To the mammoths, such distinctions didn't matter. But to humans, creatures who carve time into calendars and names, it matters deeply. This warmth is their golden age, their canvas. A quirky fringe thought slips in. Some geologists argue we've already left the Holocene, entering the Anthropocene, defined not by glaciers or warmth, but by humanity itself, our cities, plastics, and carbon footprints etched into stone. You smile wryly. Imagine an epoch where the defining fossil isn't a trilobite or a mammoth, but a soda can. Earth must have a strange sense of humour. As dusk settles, you find yourself among farmers gathering harvest. They bundle sheaves of grain, pile gourds and beans, and laugh around a fire. Children chase each other with sticks, their laughter ringing through the twilight. The smell of bread baking drifts on the air, earthy and sweet. You sit quietly at the edge of the glow, feeling both guest and witness. The stars appear, softer now against a sky touched by smoke from countless hearths. Civilization is only beginning, but already the world hums differently. The roar of beasts is quieted, replaced by the murmur of villagers. The Holocene is not dramatic, not thunderous, but it is profound, a lull that lets humans write stories bigger than themselves. You close your eyes, warmed by fire and bread, and feel the planet settle into its fragile balance. For the first time in this long journey, you sense a home not only for animals, but for memory, culture, and future. The Earth stabilizes, sort of, and in that sort of, all of human history finds its chance. The night sky is familiar now, so familiar that you almost forget how many skis you've walked beneath in this journey. Stars shimmer faintly, the same constellations once seen by Neanderthals, by mammoth hunters, by the first farmers who raised their eyes after planting seeds. But as you settle into the Holocene's warmth, you feel another question stirring. What comes next? The Cenozoic isn't over. You're still inside it. The story isn't just about what was, it's about what will be. You walk across a field where the grass has been cut into neat squares, each plot dotted with houses, tractors and fences. Civilization spreads like a new kind of ecosystem, reshaping rivers, levelling forests, taming the land to its will. You see highways glinting in the sun, cities pulsing with lights, towers rising higher than trees. Humans have become the architects of landscapes, rewriting ecosystems faster than glaciers or tectonics ever could. You chuckle softly. Who would have thought that shrew-like survivors hiding under logs after the asteroid would one day build Wi-Fi? But progress has shadows. The air carries the hum of engines, the faint tang of smoke, the heat of concrete radiating underfoot. Animals still roam, deer in the woods, foxes in the suburbs, pigeons strutting across city plazas. But the giants are gone, their bones locked in museums. Historians still argue whether the next great extinction is already underway, driven not by asteroids or volcanoes, but by us, the clever apes who learn to farm, paint and burn. You pause, staring at the skyline, and wonder, are we the next asteroid? A quirky tidbit flickers in your thoughts. Geologists debate whether the Anthropocene should be marked by nuclear fallout, plastic layers in the soil, or the sudden spread of chicken bones worldwide. Yes, chickens, the humble descendants of dinosaurs, now bred in such numbers that their remains may define this epoch. Imagine paleontologists millions of years from now, puzzling over fossilized drumsticks, declaring, "This must have been the age of the chicken." You laugh quietly. It's a fitting irony that dinosaurs still get the last word. And yet, it isn't all loss. New ecosystems bloom in the gaps, urban foxes, rooftop gardens, coral reefs growing on sunken ships. Technology links continents faster than tectonics ever could. Climate shifts again. Glaciers retreating not over millennia but centuries of torn swelling, storms intensifying. The Earth trembles at our pace, unaccustomed to such speed. But life is stubborn, endlessly adaptive. You've seen it crawl from ash, sprout from soot, bloom in warmth, endure in ice. It will not stop here. You climb a small hill at the edge of a modern city, where the skyline meets the horizon. The hum of traffic blends with the calls of birds settling into twilight roosts. Above, satellites blink among stars, a new constellation of human invention. You stretch out on the grass, cool beneath your hands, and feel the weight of it. The Cenozoic isn't just history, it's the age you live in, the breath you're taking right now. The future lies wide open. Perhaps the next giants will rise from the oceans again, sleek and alien. Perhaps humans will carry Earth's story to other planets, planting seeds in foreign soil. Or perhaps the cycle will repeat. Climate shifting, life reshaping, species rising and falling in endless succession. The Cenozoic doesn't end here. It stretches forward, uncertain but alive. You breathe deeply, letting the cool night air settle into your lungs. All around you, echoes of the past whisper. The mammoths rumble, the monkeys chatter, the whales' first songs. And layered atop them is the hum of the present. Cities glowing, people speaking, fires burning still. You realize you've walked from ash to empire, from lizards in soot to satellites in orbit, and the story is far from finished. The Earth turns, steady as always, carrying you into tomorrow's chapter. You close your eyes, soothed by the rhythm of it all. The age. After the dinosaurs is not a single tale. It is a chorus still unfolding, waiting for the next verse. Sweet dreams, wanderer. The Cenozoic keeps going, and so do you.